The room fell silent the moment my dad's voice echoed through the speakers. Jenna built this with me. She's the one I trust with a legacy, not Elaine. You could have heard a pin drop. My sister was still standing on stage, smiling from her eulogy, unaware I was about to flip everything she'd rehearsed. Hi, I'm Jenna, and if you've ever felt written out of your own family's story, you're not alone. They tried to erase me, line by line. But they forgot one thing. I kept the receipts, and my father's voice was the loudest one of all. Before we jump into the story, if you don't mind, let me know where you're from by leaving a comment below. That way, I can send a special hello your way. Now go ahead, grab yourself a warm cup of water and find a comfy spot. It's time to begin the story. I parked 2 blocks from the Memorial Center, not because there wasn't valet or an open lot, but because I needed the walk. The pavement was damp with last night's rain, and each step in my black heels made a soft tap against the sidewalk like I was counting something backwards. I didn't bring an umbrella. The mist clung to my coat, my hair, and the air felt heavy, like it knew I was walking into something I wouldn't be allowed to grieve properly. The building rose like glass and silence. San Mateo Memorial Center had that sterile kind of beauty. New concrete, polished railings, big glass panels that reflected the gray sky like it had something to hide. As I neared the front entrance, a few familiar faces passed me. No one stopped. One man gave me a polite nod, the kind you give a grocery store clerk you vaguely recognize. No one said my name. I paused at the welcome board outside. In loving memory of Russell Walker, it read in tall serif lettering. Below that, hosted by Elaine Walker and family. That was it. Just Elaine. Just her version of the story. I stepped inside and was immediately met by the scent of white lilies and citrus cleaner. The lighting was warm but impersonal, designed for photographs, not feelings. A sharply dressed young woman holding a tablet approached with a clipboard smile. Hi there. Are you here for the Walker service? I am, I said. She glanced at her list, tapped the screen once, then frowned. And your name? Jenna. Jenna Walker. Her eyes flicked up quickly, then down again, scanning. Huh. The family section is rows 1 through 3, but I don't see... She didn't finish. I shook my head gently. Just show me to any open seat. There was a pause. Then she gave a quick nod and gestured to an usher. I was led to a side aisle seat 3 rows behind the media riser. From there, I could see the podium, the slideshow monitor, and the entire front section, my family, without being seen. I sat quietly. Inside the pocket of my coat, I rubbed my thumb against one of Dad's cufflinks. Silver, square-edged, slightly tarnished. I had taken them from his drawer after the hospital. No one had noticed. The ceremony began on time. Elaine was the second speaker. She walked to the podium like she'd rehearsed it, like this was just another shareholder meeting. She wore a black dress that looked tailored more for headlines than mourning. Her voice was crisp, the kind of tone that floats easily through a microphone. My father believed in vision, she said. He built not just a company, but a legacy I'm honored to continue. She didn't cry. She didn't stammer. She didn't mention me, not once. The slideshow rolled behind her. Photos of Dad cutting ribbons at construction sites, shaking hands with mayors, laughing with donors. None of him in the backyard teaching me how to jumpstart a car. None of our Sunday fish taco runs down Highway 92. None of the nights I stayed in the office rewriting proposals while he scribbled ideas on napkins beside me. Elaine smiled softly. Dad always knew who had the vision. The crowd clapped. I didn't. No one turned to look at me, but I could feel a few glances, half curious, half embarrassed, like I was a name they once knew but now avoided pronouncing. After the ceremony, the reception room buzzed. Platters of cheese cubes and mineral water sat untouched near the back. I walked toward the side hallway, searching for a space where I could breathe without eyes on me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. One new message. It was from Elaine's assistant, forwarded from her private group chat. Champagne's in the fridge. O's out. She finally has it all. I stared at the screen for a long moment, as if rereading it might change the words. There's a kind of pain that doesn't sting or burn. It just settles, like dust on furniture no one sits on anymore. I didn't reply. I didn't cry. I just slid the phone back into my coat and stepped quietly toward the main exit. There, framed in gold against the wall, was a portrait of Dad. Elaine had chosen the photo. He was in a suit, smiling for a press release at the company's 10-year anniversary. Just him. There used to be a version with me in it, too. They'd cropped it. I stood still, watching the light catch the glass just so, blurring the space where my shoulder had once been beside his. As people streamed out behind me, laughter already returning to their voices, I leaned in, barely loud enough for the frame to hear me. They didn't just bury him today, they buried me too. Then I walked out into the cold, letting the drizzle settle again on my hair, my cuffs, and the back of my hands. Sometimes the deepest grief isn't loud, it's invisible, but it changes everything. It wasn't grief that hit me, it was clarity, the kind that doesn't come with tears or loud voices, but with a stillness so precise it slices right through the noise. The morning after the funeral, I sat in my apartment with the lights off. The fog pressed thick against the window glass. Outside, the world moved without me. Commuters, joggers, delivery trucks, none of them knowing or caring that someone had just buried more than a man. They'd buried the part of me that once believed in fairness. My phone buzzed. It was Bernard Fox, my father's longtime attorney and the only person in the family orbit who hadn't stopped looking me in the eye. "We should meet," he said, no preamble. "Today, if possible." His office smelled like old wood and older coffee. The blinds were half closed, casting lines of shadow across a long leather couch no one ever used. A jazz station hummed low from a wall speaker. Miles Davis, probably, something that made you feel like time was stalled on purpose. Bernard didn't stand when I entered. He just gestured to the chair across from his desk and pushed a thin folder forward. "This is the revised will," he said, "filed 6 months ago." The paper was thick, creamy, expensive. Elaine's name was typed in bold several times. Mine appeared only once, buried in a paragraph between legal acknowledgments and closing terms. I was to receive a framed portrait of my father, a personal letter, and a one-time $50,000 honorarium. I stared at the page. My hand didn't shake. "I assume this is a copy." Bernard nodded. "Of course, the original's with the firm." "And he signed this willingly?" There was a pause long enough for a sigh. "It was submitted as final, with power of attorney granted 3 years prior." My eyebrows lifted. Number that was temporary, for the Texark merger. Bernard turned slowly in his chair and opened a lower cabinet. He pulled out another folder, older, with a red tab marking the signature page, my signature. "Limited power of attorney," he read aloud, "executed July 2020, no expiration clause, later amended in 2022 with expanded scope." I remembered the pen, the one Elaine had handed me across the patio table, sliding the folder over a plate of untouched melon slices. "It's just paperwork," she'd said with that breezy smile of hers. "You trust me, right?" I had. "Who amended it?" I asked. Bernard hesitated. "Filed under her office, legal on her side approved. I didn't see the revision until it had already been submitted." The air in the room changed. Not colder, just sharper. "She used my trust as a lever," I said, not needing him to confirm. He didn't nod, but he didn't deny it either. His hand rested over the folder as if he could will the weight of the page to soften. That night, I sat cross-legged on the floor of my apartment, laptop open, fingers still. I didn't Google fraud or contest a will. I just stared at the empty search bar until the cursor blinked me into awareness. Then came the message. No subject, no sender. Just a single line, "I still have access." Attached was a name I didn't recognize, LMOSS. The email included a secure link. I hesitated, then clicked. A chat window opened. Lyndon Moss. Hi, I used to work in back-end brand ops during the rebranding. You probably don't remember me. Me? I don't. Lyndon? But I remember you. And I saved some things. There was a pause. Then 3 files appeared. The first, a screen capture of the company's internal file tree. The second, metadata logs from 2020 to 2022, showing attribution edits, every mention of my name as project lead, founder, strategist, replaced or deleted. The third, an email thread from Elaine's comms team. Remove Jenna from all decks pre-Q4. Align narrative around Elaine-only build. I didn't speak. Couldn't. Lyndon messaged again. They didn't delete you. They just wrote over you. It was then I reached for my old yellow legal pad. On the first line, I wrote, "What they took, what they forgot. What they took was easy. Equity, authorship, memory. What they forgot? That I still knew how to find the bones under the marble." The next morning, I drove to an address I hadn't visited in nearly 2 years. A modest house tucked behind eucalyptus trees, where a man named Marcellus James still lived in a world where your word meant something. He opened the door slowly, as if he half expected a solicitor. When he saw me, his shoulders dropped, not in disappointment, but in recognition. "Jenna," he said, voice steady, "it's been a long time." "I need to ask you something," I said. "Did my father know what she did?" Marcellus didn't move for a moment. Then, quietly, he said, "Come in." We sat at his kitchen table. A stained mug of tea steamed between us. He didn't touch it. "He knew something was shifting," Marcellus said. "He was tired, and she moved fast. She used his trust and yours. That's how these things work. Not all betrayals come with a knife. Some come with smiles and pens." That night, I couldn't sleep. The lamp on my desk flickered in its socket. I opened my email to check Lyndon's folder again. One more message had arrived. No text, just a single attachment. Dad final recording, .mp3, time-stamped, 3:47 a.m. I stared at the screen, not daring to press play. Not yet. The cursor hovered over the file, the way a finger hovers over a truth you can't unhear. Outside, fog wrapped around the streetlights like gauze. Inside, my heart beat slow and certain. The silence between signatures had never been empty. It had been calculated, and now it was over. This wasn't just betrayal, it was design. I sat at my kitchen table with the lights dimmed and the blinds drawn. Rain tapped against the glass like it was trying to remember the rhythm of something older than sound. The file sat open on my laptop screen. Dad final recording, .mp3. I'd waited nearly a full day to press play. I wasn't sure if I was afraid of what he'd say or what he wouldn't. When I finally clicked it, the speakers clicked softly, and then silence. For 3 seconds, it was just the faint rustling of papers. Then his voice came through, low, measured, unmistakably his. "If something happens, and I'm not around, Jenna is the one who built this with me. She understands what we started. She'll take care of it the right way." My breath caught. It wasn't a scripted line. It wasn't meant for public hearing. It was a father talking about trust. Not the performative kind, but the kind that's built through late nights, paper drafts, shared failures, and knowing silences. I sat back in the chair, eyes closed, letting his voice fade into the hum of the room. The file was only 41 seconds long, but it filled more space than years of boardrooms ever had. I saved the file, retitled it quietly, Truth Not Tears. It was more than a label. It was a boundary, a vow. I wouldn't cry in public spaces anymore. I wouldn't argue in rooms that had already made up their minds. I wouldn't explain myself to anyone who looked at me like a footnote. That afternoon, I called Marcellus. He didn't ask questions, just said, "I'll meet you there in 20." The old storage facility was in Redwood City, tucked behind a shuttered auto repair shop and a faded billboard advertising real estate agents who'd probably retired a decade ago. The air inside smelled like rust and printer ink. The light buzzed overhead. Marcellus walked with me past rows of dented file cabinets until we reached a wide steel door. He unlocked it with a key from his jacket. Inside was a low shelf of boxes, folders, and a few framed documents still wrapped in brown paper. "I kept these," he said, his voice gravel. "Back when everything started shifting. Figured someone would need them eventually." We sifted through binders, presentation decks, strategy whiteboards from the company's early years. One blueprint had my handwriting in the margins, tiny notes about server allocations and deadline targets. Another had both mine and Dad's initials, scribbled in different colored pens. The third was a flyer, Pitch Night 2016. Jenna Walker listed first. Elaine was in the third slot. Marcellus said nothing. He didn't need to. The paper said enough. Back in my car, I sat still for a moment, the folder in my lap. I thought of all the times I'd told myself to let things go, to take the high road. But sometimes, the high road is just a lonely sidewalk that never gets you home. Later that night, I met Lyndon at a diner off Highway 1. The kind that hasn't changed in 50 years. Red vinyl booths, a jukebox that only plays if you hit it twice. I slid into the booth across from him. He looked even younger in person. Hoodie zipped halfway, glasses slightly fogged. He didn't say hi, just pulled out a USB and set it on the table beside the ketchup bottle. "It's all in here," he said. "Internal emails, version history logs, brand asset tracking. They didn't delete you. They just reattributed everything." He opened his laptop and walked me through it. Metadata trails, versions of early mission statements with my name, later overwritten, meeting recordings edited before upload. One slide deck in particular made me pause. The footer read, "Founding Strategy, E. Walker, 2017. The timestamp showed I'd last modified it. The author tag had been switched the day after I went out sick with pneumonia. "You saved all of this?" I asked. "I didn't know why at first," Lyndon said, "but I knew it was wrong, and you were the only one I remembered being fair." A quiet beat passed between us. Then he added, "Most people think erasure is loud, but it's subtle. It's formatting and fonts and who gets CC'd. He handed me the USB. As I drove home that night, the rain had stopped. The roads shimmered under streetlights. I pulled into my driveway, turned off the engine, and sat in the quiet hum of the cooling car. I thought about everything that had been taken, and then I thought about what they forgot. Inside, I pulled out my yellow legal pad again. Same 2 columns. What they took: company shares, public credit, time with my father. What they forgot: that I kept every early version, that I still had my father's voice, that the truth has roots underneath it. I added one more line, that I never needed the spotlight to build the stage. The next morning, I opened the gala invitation Elaine had sent weeks ago, one of those mass-mailed glossy things meant to look personal. I clicked the RSVP link, filled in the blank name field with Walker J, and checked the box beside attending. Then I opened a drawer in my desk, pulled out a small velvet box, and took out Dad's cufflinks. I placed them beside the USB. "You wanted a clean legacy," I said softly, more to myself than anyone else. I slid the USB into my purse and zipped it shut. "Let's clean it in public." She lit the room with her words. I lit the truth with his voice. The venue shimmered. That's the only word for it. Every surface reflected something. Light, ambition, legacy. Even the glass doors gave back a version of yourself that felt dressed up and just slightly removed from who you really were. I entered through the side door. A young woman in black with a wireless headset and a clipboard stood at the check-in stand, glancing down at her screen and scanning names. "Last name?" she asked without looking up. "Walker," I said. There was a beat of hesitation. She typed, then frowned. "Sorry, do you have the invitation QR?" I showed her the printed card. Ivory stock, gold foil edges, my name handwritten in loopy calligraphy, J. Walker. She gave a tight smile and scanned it quickly, still not connecting me to anything beyond her spreadsheet. "Fourth row center, bars to the left," she said. "Enjoy the program." I walked down the carpeted aisle slowly, eyes adjusting to the low, warm lighting. Gold uplights glowed behind sheer white panels. At the front of the room, the podium stood between two towering columns of white orchids. The screen above the stage played a muted slideshow. Photos of Dad with governors, cutting ribbons, pointing at blueprints. I sat in the fourth row between a tech investor I recognized from Forbes and a woman who smelled like rose water and polite disinterest. The program rested on each seat, thick and glossy. Elaine's photo graced the back, her biography written in glowing praise, every mention of the company's origin carefully curated. Every mention of my name was absent. As the house lights dimmed, soft strings played over the sound system. A hush fell over the room, the kind that only money and optics can purchase. The screen lit up with a tribute film. It opened with Dad in his early years, gritty, confident, helmet tucked under one arm. And then Elaine appeared, right beside him in every key frame. In meetings, on construction sites, even at press events I distinctly remembered attending with them, except now, she stood alone in the frame. I had been edited out so seamlessly it took my breath away. The narration began. Her voice, smooth, reverent, precisely paced. He believed in building more than structures. He built principles, vision, legacy. I watched my own speech, the one I had written years ago for our first company pitch, flow from her lips, slightly rewritten but unmistakable. I could even hear the rhythm I had crafted in her cadence. The crowd nodded. Some even wiped away tears. Then Elaine appeared on stage. Dressed in white, hair swept back, she radiated the kind of confidence that doesn't ask permission. She smiled softly as the applause swelled, then placed her hand gently on the podium. "My father taught me that legacy isn't what you leave behind, it's what you build into others." She paused, waited for the silence to lean in. And that's why tonight isn't about remembering, it's about continuing. More nods, more admiration. The room belonged to her, until it didn't. As the audience clapped once more, I stood, slowly, calmly. I didn't move toward the stage. I turned and walked up the side aisle where the tech booth sat partially hidden behind a white curtain and a row of AV monitors. A young man with headphones around his neck glanced up as I approached. "Excuse me," I said quietly, holding out the USB. "Can you cue this next?" He looked from me to the device, then back again. I'm not sure we can just—" "He deserves to be heard," I said gently, without force. There was something in my voice, or maybe just the simplicity of the request, that made him nod. He inserted the USB, eyes flicking across the screen. I didn't ask what he saw. I just stepped back and returned to my seat without another word. The lights dimmed again. A pause. Then silence. No string music, no video transitions, just a black screen. Then Dad's voice. "If something happens, and I'm not around, Jenna is the one who built this with me. She understands what we started. She'll take care of it the right way." Gasps rippled across the room. A few people sat forward. One woman's hand went to her chest. Another voice. Dad's again. This time from a later recording. "She was there when no one else showed up. This company doesn't exist without her." A photograph filled the screen. A candid. Me and Dad standing beside a construction trailer, wind tossing my hair, both of us laughing. It hadn't been a press shot. It had been taken by an intern. We'd framed it at home. Now it was 10 feet wide across a wall of stunned silence. Elaine hadn't moved. Her hands still rested on the podium, knuckles tight against the wood. Her smile had disappeared. Not anger, just a frozen stillness, like someone whose reflection just betrayed them. Then came the final line. "Legacy isn't about who gets the credit. It's about who carried the weight when no one was watching." The screen faded to black. No applause, no music, just breathe. and the soft shuffling of 100 reputations trying to decide what they'd just witnessed. The live stream feed froze. Then it cut. I stood and walked down the aisle without turning my head. No one stopped me. No one knew what to say. Outside, the air had cooled. The wind came in from the bay, salt and steel mixed in the night. The building behind me gleamed under the spotlights. From here, it looked untouched, unaware. My phone buzzed. 5 missed calls, all from Elaine. I didn't pick up. Some truths don't need explanation. They just need oxygen. They spent years erasing me line by line. I rewrote the ending in 1 sentence. The morning after the gala, I woke to find a thick, white envelope slid under my door. The kind of envelope that looks important before you even open it. Weighted paper, sealed with precision, my name typed in all caps across the front. Inside was a cease and desist. Elaine's legal team had wasted no time. They claimed breach of privacy, reputational damage, and, my personal favorite, unauthorized disruption of a legacy tribute event. I didn't laugh, but I did breathe out slowly and set it down on the kitchen table, beside the folder labeled Truth Not Tears. Later that afternoon, my phone lit up again. This time, it wasn't a threat. It was Lyndon. "I sent it," he said, without preamble. "What exactly did you send?" "Everything." The file dump appeared online within the hour, a quiet post on an anonymous message board at first, then reposted to a whistleblower subreddit, then picked up by a mid-tier tech site. From there, it spread like spilled ink on white carpet. Screenshots, internal emails, timestamp logs, attribution metadata. Each document traced the systematic removal of my name from founding decks, project files, and media packages. There were even marked-up comments from a brand consultant recommending that Jenna's presence be minimized in all external-facing materials to streamline narrative. It was dated the same week I'd been hospitalized with pneumonia. The internet didn't explode, but it rumbled. Old employees commented on LinkedIn, quietly confirming they'd always suspected something. Investors from the early years reposted the findings with one-line captions like, "Interesting developments." Even a few journalists began asking pointed questions. By the second day, Jenna Walker trended softly beneath a hashtag someone started, "Rewrite the record." I didn't post, I didn't comment, I just listened. Marcellus called that evening. "Board's convening in 2 days. Bernard's going to bring the clause." "The reversal?" he confirmed with a quiet hum. Back in 2017, when I signed my co-founder agreement, I'd added a clause, almost as an afterthought. It stated that if any internal misrepresentation or erasure of contributions occurred, the agreement could be voided. At the time, it felt symbolic. Now, it was concrete. The arbitration took place inside a glass conference room at Walker Innovations HQ. I hadn't stepped foot in the building in over a year. The front lobby still smelled like citrus and ambition. Elaine sat at the far end of the table, flanked by her attorneys. Her posture was impeccable, but her eyes darted more than usual. The calm control she was known for had developed a hairline crack. The board members, 8 of them, were silent as Bernard spoke. He presented the clause, then the digital logs. Lyndon sat quietly behind him, offering technical clarifications when asked. Elaine's lawyer responded with phrases like creative reallocation of credits and narrative cohesion. She herself only spoke once, voice even but thinner than usual. "There was never an intent to erase Jenna," she said, "only to unify the brand." Silence followed. Then one board member asked, "Why wasn't Jenna consulted during that unification?" Elaine looked down. It was enough. When the board ruled, they didn't use dramatic words. No gavel, no outrage. Just a firm statement entered into record. Jenna Walker would be reinstated as founding partner and strategic architect, 2016 to 2022. Effective immediately. All future public materials would reflect this. Elaine would remain on the board but relinquish all external-facing authority. The press release came out the next morning. It was brief, muted, acknowledging, adjustments in recognition of foundational contributions. No names were mentioned beyond mine. Elaine's resignation from the public role was posted quietly on the company's site. No comments allowed, but that didn't stop the responses elsewhere. Someone reposted it to Twitter with the caption, "We knew." And then came the message. A short email from one of our earliest angel investors. "I always wondered why you disappeared," it read. "Your voice shaped those first meetings. Glad to see the record catching up." I didn't reply. Not because I wasn't grateful, but because it wasn't about them. It never had been. That evening, I spread all the old papers across my coffee table. Pitch decks, meeting notes, even the original flyer from our 2016 debut. The one with my name in bold and the corner slightly torn. Across the room, my phone buzzed. A notification from a platform I hadn't used in months. I opened the app and saw it. A photo I'd never seen before, tagged by a former intern. In the shot, I was standing beside my father, blueprint in hand. Sunlight was bouncing off the corner of my smile, and my hair was windblown in a way that made the whole thing feel real, not curated. The caption underneath read, "She built it before anyone believed in it." I stared at the image for a long time, and then I closed the app, leaned back on the couch, and let the silence settle, not as absence, but as something earned. Some legacies are loud. Mine walks in quietly and stays. It was March again. Almost exactly a year since the funeral, though this time the air felt less like mourning and more like pause. Half Moon Bay had already begun its slow bloom. Wild grass swayed along the coastline, and the wind carried just enough warmth to hint that spring wasn't far behind. The invitation came printed on soft cream cardstock, Legacy Reimagined, a tribute to the vision that built us. It was a gentle title, the kind meant to ease a reputation back into grace. I wasn't listed as a speaker, just invited guest. No fanfare, no title. I still went. The venue was in the Presidio this time, overlooking the bay with wide windows and driftwood decor. Intentional, respectful, neutral. The rebrand was clear in the details. More community, less corporate. They'd replaced the gleaming marble signage with warm wood. The chairs were arranged in a semicircle instead of rows. There was no podium, but there was one chair, front and center, that wasn't occupied. It had a nameplate resting gently on its cushion. Jenna Walker, co-founder. No spotlight on it. No camera trained in that direction. Just the presence of it. A stillness. The ceremony moved forward in calm tones. No dramatics. The new CEO, barely 30, kept their remarks brief. They mentioned structural integrity and foundational values, the kind of language that mattered less in content and more in cadence. But it was the intern who caught me off guard. She stepped up nervously, clutching a folded piece of paper with both hands. Her voice shook, just slightly as she read. While preparing for this event, I studied the early decks, the first ones, from the archives, and I kept seeing the same initials in the margins, JW. They were next to every major strategy note, every shift, every risk. She looked up, not at me directly, but in my direction. I never met Jenna Walker, but I'm standing here today because she laid the bricks the rest of us walk on. No one clapped. They didn't need to. Mom sat beside me, posture upright, hands resting in her lap. Her nails were painted light pink, the same color she used to wear when I was in high school. She reached over and took my hand. Her skin felt dry but warm. She didn't say much. But then, just before the lights dimmed, she leaned in and whispered, "I should have spoken up." I turned to her. "Now you have." That night, I didn't go home right away. I drove along the coast until the traffic lights disappeared and the sound of the ocean replaced everything else. Back at the cottage, the porch light flickered to life as I pulled in. Inside, the windows glowed softly with the kind of quiet only familiar places can hold. The table was already set. Marcellus brought sourdough from a bakery he still insisted was the best in the county. Lyndon showed up late, holding 2 cartons of potato salad and a USB drive he claimed had nothing important on it, just history. Bernard brought wine. Not the expensive kind, just what he liked. We didn't talk about Elaine, or the lawsuits, or the press cycle. We talked about a prototype that once caught fire mid-demo, about a holiday party where someone spiked the cider with cold brew concentrate. We laughed harder than I thought we would. After dinner, as the dishes dried in the rack and the last candle burned low, Marcellus reached into his coat and handed me a worn, leather-bound notebook. "Your dad kept this in his desk," he said. "Said some things weren't meant to be filed, just remembered." I flipped open to the first page. In Dad's slanted, all-cap handwriting, "Jenna is the anchor. The structure doesn't hold without her." I didn't speak. I just ran my thumb across the ink, as if touching it might pull his voice back into the room for one more second. Later, after everyone had gone, I made tea and carried the mug down the back steps to the beach. The tide had receded, leaving behind long ribbons of sea foam. I sat on the sand, still in my dress, toes bare, watching the stars begin to emerge above the silhouette of the cliffs. I didn't take a photo. I didn't post anything. I didn't need to. Some moments earn their place by being lived, not shared. The wind moved gently through my hair. I closed my eyes and let it pass over me. Inside my phone, back at the cottage, sat an unsent draft email. Subject line: "Thank you for believing in me even when you were gone." I hadn't sent it. I didn't know if I ever would, but I knew it was true. When I sat on that beach, phone tucked away and the tide slipping out, it wasn't closure I felt. It was clarity. Not every legacy needs to shout. Some are built in quiet rooms and forgotten margins, in love that doesn't ask to be seen. What I learned is this: people may try to rewrite your story, but the truth has a longer memory than applause. Real legacy isn't about credit. It's about care, effort, and what we leave in others when we're gone. And sometimes the strongest voices aren't the loudest. They're the ones that last. If this story spoke to something in you, I'd be honored if you shared a thought or a memory of your own. We all carry stories that deserve to be remembered, and I'd love to hear yours.